Guys, first off, sorry about this look. Just some Mario Badescu drying lotion. So yeah. But I just wanted to kind of dedicate one of these strictly to reviewing this book. I'm not a big motivational reader. Currently I'm reading, I finished the Harry Potter series the past 6 months, and now I'm reading City of Bones, which I love the first movie, and then they canceled and stopped making it. And I have Lily Collins, but it makes me feel really dumb because intellectually or whatever, because the category is teen fiction. So it's kind of like a mix of science fiction, crime, murder, stuff like that, romance. It's all of it put together. And it's just the kind of thing that I've always loved to read. And even when there was this thing called fan fiction where you can write your own story and post it and people comment. And I attempted that, and that was always the kind of style I would read, but I haven't ever read a book that was not a story, I guess. Which in a way this is a story. Hang on, I'm gonna grab a blanket. Because it's kind of chilly and my blankets are in the laundry. Okay. I am one person, I always, no matter the weather, cold, snowy, whatever, I have to have my fan on high. Yeah, and I live with my grandparents, and I guess, so apparently, the older you get, the more, cold-blooded you are. The closer to dinosaurs they are. But, they, get colder easier, I guess, so they keep our house pretty toasty. Well, anyways, the book. Okay. Where the heck did I put it? So, Love Does by Bob Goff. I've mentioned it so many times in, conversations, posts, vlogs, the past, I don't know when I started reading it, but when I normally, read a book and I'm really, interested in it, I finish it really fast. And this, I did not. So my friend, I've told you my friend, told me about the book and was like, you should read it. I've read it multiple times. And so I, got it right away. I didn't really know what it was about. And I mean, the title, Love Does, and it says, discover a secretly incredible life in an ordinary world. And I honestly, didn't understand that until now. But, so there are 31 chapters in an epilogue. And, a whatever, what is it called? Introduction. A forward. Before word, I guess. I don't know. But each chapter, it's amazing because in devotionals I've read, in little glimpses from books I've read, the thing that turns me off is it doesn't work like a story. And I don't want to feel like I'm studying it like school. Which is kind of funny because one of the chapters is actually about how our relationship with God is not supposed to be us studying Him. And every chapter is a story is an anecdote from Bob Goff's life. If you don't know what that means, you might need to focus more in English, but an anecdote is a personal story you use when you're writing or to set an example for something. I don't know, I'm a fan of anecdotes. I don't even know if I pronounce it right, but whatever. And each chapter starts with, well, first of all, we start by learning a little bit about Bob Goff. And when I started reading this book, I didn't know until like a week ago, which I was at like the last 3 chapters, that Bob Goff is not Bob Ross, the poofy haired painter. Yeah. But Bob Goff is still alive. I just followed him on Instagram. He has, I might as well just, I'm going to read the back of the book for you. Okay. As a college student, he spent 16 days in the Pacific Ocean with 5 guys and a crate of canned meat. As a father, he took his kids on a world tour to eat ice cream with heads of state. He made friends in Uganda, and they liked him so much he became the Ugandan consul. He pursued his wife for 3 years before she agreed to date him. His grades weren't good enough to get into law school, so he sat on a bench outside the dean's office for 7 days until they finally let him enroll. Bob Goff has become something of a legend, and his friends consider him the world's best-kept secret. Those same friends have long insisted he write a book, and he finally did. It's full of paradigm shifts, musings, never heard that word, and stories from one of the world's most delightfully engaging and winsome people. What fuels his impact? Love. But it's not the kind of love that stops at thoughts and feelings. I cannot read right now. Bob is convinced love takes action. Bob believes love does. When love does, life gets interesting. Each day turns into a hilarious, whimsical, meaningful chance to make faith simple and real. Each chapter is a story that forms a book, a life. And this is one life you don't want to miss. Light and fun, unique and profound, the lessons drawn from Bob's life and attitude just might inspire you to be secretly incredible too. And then a little bit about Bob Goff. Bob Goff serves as honorary consul for the Republic of Uganda to the United States, teaches at Pepperdine Law School, I did not know that, and Point Loma Nazarene University, and is the founder and president of Love Does, a nonprofit fighting injustices, it's really dark font, committed against children. The goal of Love Does is to fight for the rights and opportunities for kids around the world who need a voice. For more information, visit www.lovedoes.org. But that's really a good explanation of this book. We hear, literally, it's the most outrageous stories that you just don't even think you would ever experience. But so much about this book, which I don't even want to call it a book. It just is in the format of a book. But I feel like he is now part of me and he's with me. And he's like whispering in my ear whenever I think of things or encounter things. I'm thinking about his voice coming from this book. And I've never felt that way before. I outlined and underlined so much that I could go through and just open it and tell you something, which I probably will. But I just wanted to say that each chapter starts with something where he says, I used to think blank, but now I know blank. For example, random chapter 13, called Bigger and Better, says, I used to think I needed to sacrifice for God, but now I know faith is like a game of bigger and better. Which I remember this chapter, so honestly, I may just go back to the beginning and give you a little prelude into the chapters. So, I used to think I needed an office to be a lawyer, but now I know all I need is an island. This is about, actually, Disneyland, he doesn't go to his office, he goes to this park bench in Disneyland, and that's where he does his office work, and I won't ruin the chapters, I'll just give you a little glimpse on, like, how they work, and then they get almost, like, more and more inspirational as they go. There's chapter 1. Oh, wait, that's not even chapter 1. This is chapter 1. Chapter 1's called I'm With You. I used to want to fix people, but now I just want to be with them. And this is about, he meets this guy who was, like, a youth pastor, and Bob Goff decides to, like, go do this adventure or move someplace, and like right then and there, and Randy's like, I'll go with you. I'm with you. And he literally grabs a bag and goes as soon as he tells him. And that, I'll just give you little glimpses of the chapters. Chapter 2, Sniper. Oh my gosh. Sniper fire. I used to think I had to act a certain way to follow God, but now I know God doesn't want to be typical. Holy smokes. This is that saying, God doesn't want us to be typical, is how I feel like I've completely changed my lifestyle and become okay with it. Is I don't need to follow this structured format of high school, college, job, this, family, this. Like, I am setting off on an adventure of life, and it's not, I think typical is a better word than like normal or ordinary. I think ordinary is okay, but typical isn't like all people are the same. It's that it's just really easy for people to do typical things. Like, just to do what they're taught and to just go with it. It's just easy. And it's not that they don't have the choice to be not normal. Like, that's not what it is. They have the choice to not be typical. But it's just so easy for people to fall into that. Oh, and this chapter is about him and his friend with their BB guns, and one of them shoots the other one in like the butt. I'm pretty sure. And each chapter is not like, I think the longest chapter was like 10 pages, which for normal books, like, that's not long, but some of them are like front and back, like 2 pages. Okay, chapter 3, Ryan and love. I used to think being loved was the greatest thing to think about, but now I know love is never satisfied just thinking about it. I love this chapter. It was so cute. This chapter is about how this guy just like walks down the street by Bob's house, and he just comes up and he's like, I guess there's like a lake or something in their back, and like a pond or something, and they have a boat. Oh wait, no, they live on the water. And like the ocean or something. And cuz they are in California. But this guy Ryan's like, "Hi, I don't know you. I'm Ryan. I want to propose to my girlfriend. Like, can I do it in your backyard? And like, can I bring my friends over to cook us dinner? And can I dance on your back porch?" And Bob's like, this is the most random thing someone's ever asked me. Like, I don't know this guy, but sure. And it's just cool. And I don't want to ruin the lesson, so I'm just going to give you little glimpses of each chapter and then kind of tell you what I've taken from this. So if you want to fast forward through these little glimpses, feel free. Chapter 4, The Reach. I used to be afraid of failing at something that really mattered to me, but now I'm more afraid of succeeding at things that don't matter. And this is kind of about like his first job, and how he like wanted to be a waiter, and when he finally became it, he was fired like the first day, which is funny because he like, I think he like, oh no, he like ripped one, and when he was handing a plate, like ripped one, which I don't even know how you recover from that. Okay. I've talked about this chapter a few times. Chapter 5, The Rearview Mirror. I used to think I could shape the circumstances around me, but now I know Jesus uses circumstances to shape me. This is a chapter about Bob's girlfriend, who they went to different schools, and she broke up with him without no reason, and he like went to talk to her, I guess. And this one like really connected with me. And so the like big thing that I've mentioned in these that I'm just, it's so like, it stood out so much to me, I'll read it again, is after he kind of tells the story, he says, I've learned that God sometimes allows us to find ourselves in a place where we want something so bad that we can't see past it. Sometimes we can't even see God because of it. When we want something that bad, it's easy to mistake what we truly need for the thing we really want. When this sort of thing happens, and it seems to happen to everyone, I found it's because what God has for us is obscured from view, just around another bend in the road. And he talks about how like God tailor-made things for us, and that was just the part where he speaks in this chapter about being blinded because what we think we need is just what we really want, and we don't really see it until it's past. That really stood out to me, especially with everything I've been going through lately with like dreams of college and being disappointed because like what I always thought was right for me and what everyone told me was right for me and stuff ends up like I guess it's not, because I was so scared I just like completely ruined my life. But I have to accept that like even if I did, I can't change it. But I didn't. Chapter 6, go buy your books. I used to think God guided us by opening and closing doors, but now I know sometimes God wants us to kick some doors down. This chapter is mentioned on the back, but he didn't get accepted into law school because he didn't do very great on his LSAT, because he like didn't take a course, I guess. He looked in like a $7 book, and he basically sat on a bench outside the dean's office of this law school for like, it might have been like 2 weeks straight, like besides like he would go home and sleep and come back, and finally was admitted. And the guy was like, go buy your books. Because every time the dean would walk by, he'd be like, all you have to do is tell me to go buy my books. I've talked about this chapter too, Sweet Maria. It's about his wife. And throughout the rest of the book, he calls her Sweet Maria, which is cute. I used to think Jesus motivated us with ultimatums, but now I know he pursues us in love. So this one was tough for me because some of the messages in here conflicted with the message I took from that earlier chapter that I read, that part to you. Well, anyways, so this chapter talks about how there's this girl. It's really funny. He like hits on her on these really embarrassing ways, and like she doesn't like him at all. And then he ends up just like proposing. I don't know how it exactly works. It was confusing to me. But the one thing I've mentioned a few times that also stood out is because of our love for each other, I understand just a little more how God has pursued me in creative and whimsical ways. Ways that initially did not get my attention. Nevertheless, he wouldn't stop. That's what love does. It pursues blindly, unflinchingly, and without end. When you go after something you love, you'll do anything it takes to get it, even if it costs everything. And that was like really tough for me because in my experience with a romantic kind of love, I pursued it blindly. I pursued it unflinchingly, without end, and it felt like it costed me everything. And I guess for me, that I genuinely had real love, it just like wasn't reciprocated the way I deserved, I guess. But referring back to that other chapter, I was just blinded by my feeling of real love, thinking that it was what I needed, but it was what I wanted, I guess. And it did, and in that moment, cost everything for me. But I guess like when you're stripped away of everything is when you really truly like define yourself. And I'm glad, I've never said this before, but I'm glad I was hurt so badly in that situation and by other people, that I have become the person I am, because without that and without these like hard times and these situations and doctors and hospitals and stuff with my dad and everything, like I would not be the person I am. I'm not saying that like I would go back through that pain or whatever, but I would not take back like who I am now because of it. I don't know. Chapter 8, Wedding Cake. I used to think being a believer was enough, but now I know Jesus wants us to participate no matter what condition we're in. So this is about his wedding, and I don't think they had very much money, and they threw their wedding, and some guy like brought a cake, and it like spills all over the floor, and they're like let's just put it in. They bring icing and they put it all back together, and there are pieces of like asphalt in it. I don't really remember like. Oh, I have. Wow, I like underlined a lot. Oh, the only thing that Jesus said he couldn't serve up were people who were full of themselves or believed the lie that they were who they used to be before they met him. Jesus seemed to say that all we would need to do is to scrape together the pieces of our lives that had fallen on the ground, bring those to him, and he would start using them. Jesus said they were getting in the way of people knowing God. So like a lot of typical religious people, this doesn't really, that first part really has to do with the cake metaphor, but I underlined this and it says like a lot of like typical religious people, because like the stereotype does fit some. It says like a lot of these like you need to be acting this way and like this checklist, and I'm honestly going to say it, some of my family and a lot of people I know and like pastors and my small group leaders and stuff, like youth group leaders, like they have been this way for me, and they may be helpful for other people, but Jesus said they were getting in the way of people knowing God, which is not a good thing. And I really like this. I like box this in really big. Jesus said we all could be used, not just when we're broken, but especially because we're broken. And like kind of how I said, like, I wouldn't take back everything that's happened to me, is that I'm not who I am without it. And just like that, like, Jesus is not going to want the me I used to be. He's going to want more of the me I am, or the me that I need to get broken some more and will be in the future. Yeah. Just say yes. I used to think you had to be special for God to use you, but now I know you simply need to say yes. This chapter is about his friend Doug, who forward did and helped him write this, and they like, oh, just kidding, that's Donald. Wow, Don, not Doug. Sorry, but they play pranks on each other and stuff, and Bob gets this call from someone in Uganda, and he's like, oh, it's Doug getting me back. And he's like, will you fly to New York and meet with us? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. But he thinks it's a prank, and he gets there, and this is when they ask him to be their consul for the United States. And it's not, and it doesn't end up being a prank, but this is like kind of the part where I don't want to live life planned. You want to be spontaneous, and it doesn't mean being reckless. Spontaneous is like, God is not a business trip. It's not planned out. And he uses this metaphor a lot, that God's not a business trip. Like, our relationship is something where God's going to lay something in front of you, and you have to say yes. Like, you have to say yes or no. Like, it's not like, oh, let me think about the plans, or let me plan it first. You just do it, or you don't. And this is where, like, we just need to go for it. And some of the most inexplicable things that happen to you, and the most amazing things that happen to you, are because you just said yes. Okay, chapter 10, I literally wrote favorite chapter. It's called The Interviews. I used to think I had to be somebody important to accomplish things, but now I know Jesus uses ordinary people more. So this chapter, you have to, if you don't read the book, get it just to read chapter 10. So this was on the day of 9/11. He calls his kids in and talks to them. And basically he's talking to them and says, like, listen, what do you all feel like what do you guys feel like? Oh, he said, if you had 5 minutes in front of a group of world leaders, what would you ask them to help make sense of life, faith, hope, and the events that are unfolding around them? He admits it was like a dorky question, but he asked them to like write it down on a piece of paper. He has 3 kids, a daughter and 2 sons. Adam thought that having the leaders over to the house would facilitate a better understanding between the leaders. So he wrote that down. Richard said if the world leaders knew what each other were hoping for, then perhaps they could start hoping for the same things. One second. And Lindsay, the daughter, wanted to do an interview with them. And so he ends up taking these kids, put together this letter. And I don't remember what it says. And they send it to basically like every world leader. And all of a sudden they get all these what does it say? So they're getting all these thank you for this, but we can't, or whatever. And then all of a sudden they get a response. And they end up getting 29 responses of people inviting them. And they promised to the kids that whoever responded and invited them, they would go. So he took their kids, he kept his promise, and he took their kids to these 29 places. So in one of the countries, they met across from the former Communist Party headquarters and stuff like that. And what was so cool is everyone they talked to, they gave them a key to their house. And they said, what did they say? What did they say? Oh, they gave them a key to their front door. And they want them to genuinely be friends. And what was so cool is they opened up so much because these kids were innocent kids just asking you questions. They didn't come with an agenda, you know? And I think that's how we have to go at life. Is what I've learned from this is we have to go at life not with this end plan. Our end plan is God. And that isn't we don't fully understand that. We don't know that. So we go with it. We don't have an agenda ahead of time besides God. And But so basically they gave them a key and they're like, come spend the night if you want. And someone ended up coming and spending the night, and it's just so funny. But there is this one thing that someone says. He says, you know what it is about someone that makes them a friend? A friend doesn't just say things, a friend does. And that's showing love. And what I've talked about in the past of I believe love is I don't think it's this romantic thing. I think that's a factor. I think love is a factor in romance, but it isn't romance. Love is friendship. Love is caring. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is always on your mind. Okay. Next, chapter 11. There's more room. I used to think I needed an invitation to get into most places, but now I know I'm already invited. So this is about the Easter egg hunt at DC. I'll go a little faster. Chapter 12. Wow, what a hit. I used to think the words spoken about us describe who we are, but now I know they shape who we are. Oh my gosh. I don't remember this one. He just wasn't good at baseball, and I think he hit one home run, and he got a letter from his coach that said, "What a hit, Bob! You're a real ball player, love, coach." And I don't think that this chapter isn't about what people say about us does matter. It's about what you say about people that matters, meaning your words of encouragement. You don't focus on, oh, he couldn't bat. You focus on that home run he hit. Even if he never hit it, never ever made contact with the ball before. Bigger and better, we mentioned this earlier. I used to think I needed to sacrifice for God, but now I know faith is like a game of bigger and better. This is kind of cool. I've never heard of this, but basically he talked about when he was little, he used to play a game, and he played it with his son, and you start with a nickel, and you go, or a dime, and you go, and you're supposed to go find something that is bigger, size-wise, and better than the dime. And his son goes from a dime to literally a pickup truck. He trades it for this, and then he trades it for a ping pong table, and he trades that for a truck, and it's yeah. You just have to read that chapter. Chapter 14, A New Kind of Diet. I used to think religion tasted horrible, but now I know I was just eating the fake stuff. This chapter is about how he was dieting with his wife, and so he decides to like eat a bagel with cream cheese, but like low fat cream cheese, and he eats it and he thinks it tastes terrible. He ended up putting like Crisco on it, like margarine or whatever, and he was like, this tastes horrible, but he keeps eating it. So stop faking it. A word not to use. I used to think words were all the same, but now I know there are some words I shouldn't use. And this isn't talking about like cuss words. What in the world? This talks about dawn, the foreword. But it was the word that in writing. And I don't remember the significance, but hunting grizzlies. I used to think I had missed the mark and God was mad about it, but now I know missing the mark is a stupid analogy. This chapter is about how he wants to go, his dad loved guns, and I guess he like got a hand of the gun and like ended up shooting it, and his sister's bed was like this, and it like ended up hitting above her bed. Like he just accidentally shot it through the house. The stories are just like really random, but they make sense when he ties it all together. I'm just doing this to like intrigue you. Corner store economics. I used to think rules were made by someone else, but now I know we get to make some of our own. And this is about how he would go buy candy at like the candy store, and I think he like, what did he do? Oh, the guy would like let him bag groceries for it. I don't know. I love this thing where he says following Jesus means doing the math differently sometimes. Chapter 18. I have Snapchats. Catching a ride. I used to think life could be shared with anyone, but now I know choosing the right people is pretty important. So he decides to go hitchhiking, like from what? Oh, someone chatted me, but it like was a mass thing. Okay. Oh yeah, I read that. Okay. We talk about Satan way more than the Bible ever talks about Satan, and I think this is really cool is that the Bible really doesn't like mention Satan as much as we're like, oh, that's Satan this, that's Satan that, and we give too much attention to Satan. And what's funny is this story actually talks about how he's like hitchhiking his way through from Northern California to Southern or the other way, and he like says that his one advice for hitchhiking is before, like, people normally say, like, it's like courtesy of the road to like say to the person that pulls up, like, where are you headed, and then have them drop, like, you just get off wherever they were going or something. But it talks about how he accidentally gets in this like person's car, and he says his name is like Satan or something, and he decides to get out. And it's talking about like spending time with people who are going like the same direction, I guess. Jeepology. I used to think the best teachers were tweed jackets and wore tweed jackets and smoked pipes, but now I know they flip over and leak. This talks about his Jeep that flipped over, and he basically almost hit, like, this old lady like hit him or something and shouldn't have been driving. Okay, I need to go faster. 10-year-old adventures. I used to know God was like going on a business trip with him, but now I know he's inviting me on an adventure instead. This is really cool. He promises his kids that at 10 years old, they tell him an adventure and he promises they'll go. So when his daughter turned 10, she wanted to go have high tea. So they went, and they go without a plan. They just go. One of his sons wanted to peek. Oh my gosh, what was the place called? Oh shoot, I just ripped that. He wanted to peek Half Dome in a blizzard. And he literally talks about how he's like dragging his kid up like in the snow, which is crazy. And this is a 10-year-old kid, remind you. Or mind you, whatever the saying is. And then his other one wanted to go motorcycle like across the desert. So they do that. But it really talks about how like I've mentioned, it's not like a planned business trip, it's going. And this, like, that, like, 100%, like, was like, you need to go on this trip, Jillian. You need to go on this backpacking trip you are wanting to do. And so, yeah. Hearing aid. I used to think God wouldn't talk to me, but now I know I'm just selective with what I choose to hear. This is just about him and his wife. You know, how we don't really, like, hear things that... My mom literally said, like, you talk too much, I just don't want to listen to you. And so she literally doesn't. The puppeteer. I used to be afraid that if I was authentic, I might take a hit, but now I know that being real means I will take a hit. This is about a painting he buys that's like crazy expensive and he saves up for it. And I guess it's one of those where you buy and it comes with like a fake one and you're supposed to hang up the fake one so that people, like a robbery or something, they'll take that and not the, like, real one. And he was like, you know what? That's, like, dumb. I'm not going to hang up, like, a fake version of myself, you know? So he puts a real one up. And I guess they would have, like, rubber band wars, and one of his kid hit it. And there was, like, a ding on the puppeteer. But he realized that it made it, like, what it was. Like, our scars are our stories. And I think that like, how works for me is that I'm not ashamed of what I've gone through. That it makes me who I am. Yeah. Friends, welcome home. I used to think following God required a lot of navigation, but now I know all I need is a line in a circle. Him and his friends that are very inexperienced sailors decide to do this like sailing competition from California to Hawaii. This is what it talks about. It's like in college. And all they eat is like canned meat. But they make it. Okay, we're almost there, people. Lose the cape. I used to think I should talk about everything, but now I know it's better to keep some things secret. He talks about The Incredibles with Edna, how Edna's like, no cape. Like, when Mr. Incredible wants a cape. And it's how, like, not all superheroes wear capes, is that it's not about, like, showing off what you've done. It's about doing it. God is good. I used to think God was good some of the time, but now I know he's good all the time. And this is about his friend, Dawn. This is not this Dawn, it's a different Dawn. And basically his friend just says, there's this whole story about it, and his friend is like saying, no, God's good all the time, and yeah. Oh, it's Dawn, and Dawn is like, basically creates certain, like, he created via the like portable whatever coffee at Starbucks. Jailbreak. Oh no, it was so cute because they like he was gonna pass away, and so they get him like while he's like on his deathbed and fly him to where his family's vacationing so he can see them, and it's so cute. And that was the last time that Bob ever saw him. Jailbreak. I used to think there were some prisons you couldn't escape, but now I know there's no place I can go where God can't rescue me. And this is when he starts like saving kids who are like sex trafficked and imprisoned. And this is like his whole story in Uganda. He has a big influence in India and then other places. The story. I used to think I needed to record stories, but now I know I just need to engage in them. This talks about his son, how Bob started to write down just everything he could remember, and he was like, ask his son, why don't you do that? So it froze, so I'm just saved it so it wouldn't mess up. But his son was like, you know what? Writing down stories and remembering things is what people do at your age, but right now, I'm the person who's doing things. At my age, like, right now, I want to go out and do everything so that one day I can remember them. Skin in the game. I used to think I needed to pick sides, but now I know it's better to pick a fight. I've talked about this. about fighting for something you're passionate about and not just like deciding to join a fight or rooting for someone to root. It's about like, this really related to me in that bullying circumstance that I was in, is that you stand up for, my allergies are killing me. You stand up for like what you believe in, and if something's wrong, you don't just like let it pass. Okay, memorizing Jesus. I've talked about this. I used to think I could learn about Jesus by studying him, but now I know Jesus doesn't want us stalkers. Is about like, it's about your relationship deep inside and not about you like knowing all the facts about him. Yeah. And that's kind of where they talk about like Christianese versus just like, and then there's this group where why do you do Bible studies? And he meets this group and they do Bible doings where they go study something in the Bible and then they take it and they go do something about it. They're like, okay, what can we do? Because God told us this, like, what can we do about it? And it's really cool. Palms up. I used to think clenched fists would help me fight better, but now I know they make me weaker. Is about, well, basically this story is whenever he would go defend his like clients or whatever, he would tell them when they gave a deposition to talk with their hands up under the table because you get less angry that way versus like that. And then chapter 31, Two Bunk John. I used to think that taking a risk would reduce the number of friends I have, but now I know that love draws more people in. This talks about how him and a student or former student went to, they just go to Uganda and they decide to like build a school for these kids. And there's this big war going on and like the whole Coney movement and everything. And so they start out with like 3 kids the first day. And then they end up with like a couple hundred after a year, or like 100 and something. And Two Bunk John is like, listen, there are these 2 kids that can't make it here. Can we set up 2 bunks for them? And Bob was very against it because I guess like Oprah or someone talked about how this was like the one thing that they failed at of like lawsuits or something because they couldn't bunk, and now they end up bunking like and having like 250 full-time boarding students, and it's called Restore Academy. And they go off and decide to buy this whole like almost like village for their students, and this is something that they built, and this movement is still going on. It's the Love Does project, and it's just so cool because he gets to go back, and their students actually have the highest like grade level testing average or something in Uganda. And then there's an epilogue, and this book is just so like, I literally like mention it 3+ times a day all the time. Like, I'm thinking about it, and it's just taught me that my life is not this laid out plan that has to be followed this way. It's about being spontaneous, loving crazy, loving like throwing yourself all the way in. It's not about being half in. Don't dip your toes, jump in the deep end, love full-heartedly, and yeah, you're gonna get hurt along the way, but you know, like if you don't do it, you're not gonna have the beauty come out of life. You're not gonna have this like, it's just, I'm in awe of this whole, like, can this be like the Bible number 2? That was really weird, but I'm about to give this to like my therapist to read, and my mom and my grandma. Like, if you want it, I should just make a waiting list. I've told my best friend today. I have told everybody that's asked me anything, you need to read this book. I will never live somewhere without this book. I want to cry with how much it's changed me and who I am. And if there was any way for me to, you know what, I'm going to write a letter to Bob Goff about how he changed my life. I don't know where I would be if all these things didn't happen to me 6 months ago. I don't know what I would do if I was still in my relationship, if I was still in college, if I hadn't dealt with my illnesses. I don't know if I hadn't had that heartbreak that forced me to face my life and face my chemical imbalances and face things that I just put aside, and to force me to love God and know why I love God. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain that this year has been the hardest year of my entire life thus far, and I don't know how anything could get harder. I have had pains worse than I feel like torture would feel. Like my heart was being ripped. Like I actually had this pressure that my heart was being ripped from my body. That there was this pain like surging through my body, and the suffering that I couldn't live with. And if it were not for the people who showed their love and their God, when I say show their love, like showed their God for me, I don't know if I would be here today. I'm thankful for the people who have hurt me. It's kind of the first time I realized how much that has made me into who I am. Kind of makes me think that no matter how perfect we would have been without Satan, I guess there wouldn't be that appreciation of God without this suffering and pain that Satan causes. And I just want to say thank you to the people who hurt me. Thank you for forcing me to face my life and to face humans and the imperfections and the beauty and the horror and everything that comes in life. Because without you, I wouldn't know God the way I know God right now. I wouldn't love myself the way I love myself right now. I wouldn't have the friends and the support that I have now. My relationship with my family would be nowhere close to how whole it feels compared to it's ever been. My health would not be where it is. Without the hurt and the pain that I've felt and had pushed at me and thrown in my place, I would just be walking blindly towards a cliff, I guess. But you guys like forced me to see the cliff and to realize that or to force me to trip. Why am I so into metaphors? It's forced me to trip and see the cliff and see how far I've gotten, how far away from, how far astray I've gone. And thank you to the people who, even if we're not like best friends, who have prayed for me, who have told me to read this book. Thank you, Tori. Who have asked me to lunch. Who have reached out to me. Who have answered me reaching out. Who have let me apologize. Who have apologized to me. Who have just had the thoughts of care. Who have been human but have shown their love and their love of God, because genuinely, like, God saves lives. God makes lives and saves lives, and I believe God is love, and that's what love does. Love saves lives. Love gives lives. Love creates lives. Love is, I think love is the most powerful thing in the universe. In anything. I think that love can make and break a community. I think love has the power to kill and to save. Love has this power that is not humanly possible to grasp, and that is God, and that is this spirit inside me has, like, it feels different. Like, I feel like there's this ghost or spirit inside me that I think differently because of this book. And at the least, like, it is 219 pages. You need to go read it. It may just save your life too.